Hi. So today's video is going to be about adding diagnosis to a treatment plan. So I cannot stress enough how important this step is, especially for any services and programs that bill and we can receive payment for. Without a diagnosis, none of our services will bill appropriately. And it's not just that you have a diagnosis on there, is that the dates have to be right, the diagnosis has to be right. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. Now, this video is geared for staff who are not diagnosing providers. So let's say case managers are the biggest group who are not staff who diagnose. What we're doing is we are borrowing diagnoses that have been entered into the system by other providers. So let's say if they have a psychiatrist and they've diagnosed them with bipolar disorder, we're not re-diagnosing them. We're just pulling the psychiatrist's diagnosis into our treatment plan to use. Okay. Same thing with if we're borrowing a diagnosis from an intake staff or any other provider, usually licensed or a doctor who can diagnose. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to do is I have my practice chart up, Hermione Granger. Okay, so I've already put in her number and I've actually gotten the chart loaded to all the way at the treatment plan. Okay, and this is what I want to do. Where it says cost center location, you want to make sure your program is in there. Okay, and in this particular situation, I'm using mental health case management as an example. Okay, and see how it's been active since 12/2 of 2020. It's February now. So in reality, if I had opened Hermione in December, but I had not applied a diagnosis to her plan yet, we would not yet be able to bill for any services provided in December or January or February up until now. Today is February 24th when I am recording this video. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to stress the importance of this. Okay. So what we do to add a diagnosis to our mental health case management plan is we are going to, right here where it says cost center location, mental health case management active, there is a button right beneath it that says treatment plans. This is different than where you go when you're looking at your treatment plan. Okay, so we're going to click on that button. And you'll see that mental health case management plan is shown in the list here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to right click and then you'll get this little drop down menu here. Okay. And the one we're looking for is associate. That means we're borrowing the diagnosis from one place to another. Okay. What are we going to associate? A diagnosis. So you want to select associate and then diagnosis. Okay. And then you can see that I have, and I'll expand these so you can see the name. See where it says linked no? It means none of these diagnoses are linked to my plan. And if I scroll over so I can see the name of the diagnosis, I can see the code. I can see the provider. So, and I can see the date that diagnosis was made. Okay. So I can see that some of them that I've entered, there was one for Dr. Forte, there was one for an ES counselor. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is that I want to add a primary diagnosis to the mental health case management plan. So the first thing is, because I'm using a mental health plan, I want to make sure that my number one diagnosis is a mental health diagnosis. Now, I could have a secondary diagnosis of substance use, right? A substance use disorder. But because my client is in a program, mental health case management, I just want to make sure that the diagnosis I select as their main diagnosis is mental health. Now, all of my options in this list are mental health diagnosis. Okay. So that situation has not come up in this particular plan, but just in case it does. Now, the alternative is also true. If you are in a substance use program, then what you're going to do is make sure that your principal primary diagnosis, your number one diagnosis, is substance use. You could have a secondary mental health. We know a lot of these things co-occur, okay? But it really just depends on what program you're in. And when in doubt, please reach out and ask me. I would be more than happy to help. Okay. So my go-to is when in doubt, go with the doctor, okay? Or the clinician who did the intake assessment, okay? And I know I put these diagnoses in as practice, so I'm always going to go with the doctor whenever possible. So I'm going to click on his diagnosis, and then it's highlighted here, and I'm just going to click on the button that says associate. And see now where it says linked yes, okay? That means I've successfully linked this. If I needed to add another diagnosis, I could, okay, if we're working on multiple things with them for case management, but you at least need to have one primary, principal, number one diagnosis on your plan. So then I'm going to click the button that says okay. And one thing I like about this section is if you double click on this line where it says mental health case management plan or whatever plan you're working on, it takes me right to the plan. So this is a step that I sometimes see get overlooked, and we've got to make sure that we do this part. Okay. So Hermione was enrolled to mental health case management, and I'm just looking here, 12/2/2020. So I need to make sure that the link date on my diagnosis is effective 12/2/2020. Also see here in my diagnosis box, it says no rank. I want to attend to that as well. Okay. So I'm going to double click on this diagnosis because I can edit it. I can adjust things as needed. All right. So on this diagnosis box, I can see that Dr. Forte has made this diagnosis effective July 1st, 2020. Very important. We don't touch anything on this screen. Okay. Because one, Dr. Forte was the one who gave this diagnosis, not me. So my name doesn't go in that provider box. Second, Dr. Forte diagnosed this person in July. Okay. And that's still true, right? They've had this diagnosis since July. Just because I didn't need it in July, that doesn't mean that it changes anything with the day that Dr. Forte assigned it. So I'm going to leave this stuff alone, and I'm going to click on the tab that says link. This is where I can put my dates. This is when I'm linking it to my plan and the number of the rank that I'm giving it. So my name can be in this box, just not in that first one. And where it says rank, I'm just going to put number 1. And where it says link and effective, that's where I am going to put the start date of my treatment plan. So my start date was, what was it? 12/2/2020. 12/2/2020. And save. And let me look at this plan just to make sure. 12/2/2020. Okay. If I got that wrong, I can still double click, go to link, 12/2/2020. I could still adjust that. I'm still able to edit it at this point. Okay. So I'm going to save. And then I'm going to save my plan. Now, if I open up my plan, this is the magic I want to see. I want to see my link effective date for December 2nd of 2020. I want to see a number 1 there. That means any sort of notes and billing that I've put in since December is now going to be able to sail right through because it's going to find a diagnosis that's attached. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this is what you do in the diagnosis is initially added to the plan. Okay. Every once in a while, someone's diagnosis changes. Okay. So if my diagnosis changed, I could double click on this, go to my link tab, and hit expiration, let's say for today's date. Okay. So if you change a diagnosis on your plan, you want to make sure that you expire the one that is on there before you replace it with a new one. And if I put a new one on there, I wouldn't backdate it to the beginning of the plan because I already had a diagnosis for that time. If I add a new one, I'm going to start the diagnosis. Oh, my new diagnosis starts today. My old one ends today. So if you need to change a diagnosis on your plan, that is a slightly different process. Okay, you would not go all the way back to the start date of your plan. Okay. You would use the date that the diagnosis had changed. So if you have questions about that, definitely reach out and let me know. But this should cover you for how to add a diagnosis on your plan from the start date of your plan. Okay. Another thing about diagnosis, they don't have to be updated every year. If next year comes and Hermione still has schizoaffective disorder, and that's our main mental health focus, I don't need to touch that diagnosis. It stays active in there as long as she has the diagnosis. It's not something you need to update annually. Okay. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I would be happy to help. But that's how you add a diagnosis to your treatment plan. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.